particularly averse to dialethism. Dialethism is the view that a sentence can be both true and false at the same time. And there are logicians who defend this view, too. As far as I can tell, the professors who constitute the membership of these schools of thought are, on the whole, equally highly intelligent, industrious, well-informed. Yet they disagree about the fundamental principles of rationality, about logic. Despite their differences about the principles of logic, logical truth, and rationality, logicians of different schools of thought are generally respectful toward one another. And furthermore, they do not consider those who have opposing beliefs on these matters to be irrational. For the most part, the adherents of the various views of logic claim that the relation of logical consequence is correctly described only from their own viewpoint. Rival views are considered incorrect. Disagreements prompt research. The adherents of a given view attempt to find reasons to support their view, such as problems that are solved on their own view but pose grave difficulties for rivals. When faced with such difficulties, adherents of the rival view are motivated to develop their own views further to meet the challenge. Sometimes a view faces repeated challenges that it's unable to solve. This can lead to the abandonment of a view, as in the case of the abandonment of psychologism in logic in the early 20th century. Sometimes a scientific revolution can be provoked when the defenders of a view find themselves repeatedly running into dead ends. Normally, however, disagreements are productive of valuable research in rival projects. The point of this analogy is not to suggest that theologians should model their views on those of logicians. Rather, that any conclusions to be drawn from features of religious differences that are shared with differences among logical schools or among the theoreticians of any given field should be applied to both. If we're not tempted to think that the persistent disagreement among various schools of logic shows that they are equally true, we should not draw this conclusion in religion, unless some relevant difference in the two cases can be used to show why the conclusion follows in religion but not in logic. What motivates alethic equality pluralism, that is, the view that religious truth is divided more or less equally among the various religious denominations, is not a recognition of religious truth plus the discovery of its equal distribution among denominations, but the goal of avoiding religious stigmatism. Might not persecution of outsiders be whipped up as easily on the basis of their allegedly false beliefs as on the basis of their destination in the afterlife? It's not unlikely. So would it not be best to prevent persecution by making it a basic principle of civilized discourse about the religions that they all have equal doses of the truth? While no price may be too high to pay to eliminate religious persecution, surely there must be a better way. If, regardless of how rough departmental politics can get, the logicians are not persecuting one another, although each school proclaims the truth of its own views to the exclusion of others with respect to the claims about which they disagree, the reason would seem to be that sociological rather than that truth is equally distributed among the logical denominations, but is unequally distributed among that truth is equally distributed among the religious denominations, but unequally distributed among the logical schools. Imagine a possible world in which the logicians were able to generate large followings of ordinary people who would attend weekly lectures in popularized logic, in which intuitionists drummed up constructivist principles into their listeners' heads, while other orators were generating outrage over doubts about the axiom of choice. Suppose that some such logicians made use of the loyalty of their followings to raise mobs who have dissenting logicians and their coteries run out of town. We might imagine that in such circumstances, in order to cool down the hotheads, a logician might appear who would defend what might be called a Kantian logical pluralism, according to which the relation of logical consequence is ineffable, but manifests itself in different, even contradictory ways in the various systems of intuitionist, classical, paraconsistent, and other logics. I submit that there is as little reason for thinking that these imaginary Kantian pluralists or occultists are right about logic, as there is for thinking that the views of John Hick or the traditionalists in the line of René Guénon are right about religion, and that what motivates acceptance of pluralism is not the metaphysical views that are used to back up one version or another, although there is no denying that these do have their charms, but the moral and social norms according to which religious stigmatism is condemned. In most scholarly disagreements, there's nothing wrong with thinking that the theory one is developing is correct and that the rival theories being developed by colleagues are wrong. But in so doing, there should be no condemnation. Of course, rival theories generally agree on many important points and disagree on crucial issues. But the respect shown to colleagues holding rival positions is not solely due to shared opinions. One who does not agree with the philosophical principles on which intuitionist logics are based may still appreciate the elegance of the systems developed on that basis. I would hope that likewise, even those who have different religious commitments could show professional respect for one another's theological positions while disagreeing. The general perspective that I'm trying to advocate in this paper that I've read for you today and in a series of other papers is that we should stop trying to engage in dialogue always by finding something that we all agree on. Finding something that we all agree on is good. I'm not against that at all. But there's a lot of interesting stuff that we have that we don't agree on. And sometimes the stuff that we don't agree on or don't have sufficient information about might be the most interesting part of the dialogue. So I think that errors occur or problems occur in religious dialogue when we take our own tradition as being a standard by which we're going to condemn or praise people in other traditions. And we can have an open view and be willing to learn from other traditions without compromising our own faith. So many times I run into students who tell me, we had a discussion with somebody from another faith group, and they criticized us, and we tried to criticize them, and they were able to give answers to our criticisms, but we didn't know what to say when they criticized us. What should we do? And it's a problem, I usually refer to this as a kind of football model of religious dialogue. It's like, we have these two teams, and we want to see which one is able to score the most points against the other one. And this is sophomoric. What we should be trying to do in dialogue is to gain deeper insight into very, very important issues that have been humanity's been facing since God knows when. And we can make use of we can benefit from understanding how people in different traditions approach these issues and what conceptual tools they use, without saying that, well, because this one's using conceptual tools of a different sort, that tradition has to be condemned. At the same time, we should expect that if one has loyalty and belief to one's own tradition, is not going to say, well, the truth must lie somewhere in between, or maybe each side can compromise, as if we're trying to buy a carpet or something, and we can negotiate, and I'll give away some of my beliefs if you give away some of your beliefs, and then maybe we can come to an agreement. This is a bad idea. What we should be doing is respecting the differences that we have and exploring with one another the way that we seek to solve theological, moral, and other sorts of problems. And I think that that's the hope that you can find in what I've described here as a non-reductive religious pluralism, which was mostly inspired by the work of Shahid Mutahari. But you can find in a number of different places as well a different kind of program, but which has similar outlook to religious differences, can be found in the scriptural reading movement. Scriptural reading movement began in England by David Ford and a number of other theologians. Peter Oakes was one of is a rabbi who's teaching in Virginia, who was formative about this, and he takes a similar kind of attitude. That is, that we should explore how people of different traditions approach their own scriptures, although he's talking mostly about understanding of scriptures, whereas with respect to this non-reductive religious pluralism, I'm talking about issues of religious belief and salvation more generally. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I know because we are planning to visit another institute before we go back to the hotel today, just, the Institute for Virtual Learning, which is in one part of the Al-Mustafa. I have humbly asked Dr. Lagenhausen to conclude this session a bit earlier, and alhamdulillah, we are going according to the plans. Can we have about 10 minutes, 15 minutes of questions and answers? If I would like to inject that discussion here, even, we've been very passive without any questions. I'm sure there are questions, and I'm sure Axel can start us off. So there you are, please.
Good morning. I just have a quick question. You spent most of your lecture describing John Hick's religious pluralism, and then towards the end, you gave the hypothetical Kantian logical pluralism followers that you said there's little reason that they, could be right about logic as John Hick, and then you put in there the traditionalists are right about religion. How would you distinguish John Hick's pluralism from the traditionalists, or do you not distinguish them at all?
I think the basic approach is the same. Both of them take what appears to me to be a kind of least common denominator approach to religions. For the traditionalists, the idea is that there's some kind of perennial wisdom, and that's where truth and the way to achieve salvation is to be found, and all the exoteric elements of religion are just a kind of window dressing. Whereas this is, maybe I'm being unfair. I'm exaggerating a little bit. But on the other hand, on Hick's interpretation, what you find is that the ultimate reality or ultimate truth is something that we can't say anything about at all, and all the different religions, whatever they say about truth, is just a reaction to being faced with this ultimate reality. And then he identifies a few extremely general claims that can be attributed across religions, and that he thinks constitutes their essence. So both of them take there to be some kind of esoteric truth, some non-apparent truth, that's the foundation and substance of religion, on the basis of which religion is to be morally judged, and also truth claims are to be judged. Yeah.
I mean, I always spread John Hick as saying you actually cannot get to the esoteric truth; it's unreachable. Whereas the traditionalists said, no, you have access to it through exoteric understanding and through esoteric understanding. Because how would you explain then, the interactions between John Hick and Dr. Nasser, or Hans Kung and Dr. Nasser, where Dr. Nasser basically chastises and reproaches, both Hans Kung and John Hick for giving up on their religious tradition,
the thing is that John Hick, although he says that we can't say anything about ultimate truth, actually has a lot to say about it. It's like Kant with the noumena. Kant said that we can't say anything, we can't know anything about the noumena. But infamously, he said that it's the support of all the phenomena. And so there's a similar kind of thing that happens in Hick. Nass, when he criticizes Hick, he's not relying on this kind of Kantian idea. So he has specific things to say about what the perennial wisdom consists of. And so it seems to me that his position is actually more defensible than what you find in Hick, because Hick is left with this kind of ineffability problem.
Thank you very much. I'd like to think of religious pluralism from the Islamic point of view. It seems to me the Quran mentions diversity in divine creation. But at the same time, the Quran says there is only one true religion. And the Quran criticizes adherents of other religions in that they have changed the original teaching from God. So what should I think about this question?
I don't want to tell you what you should think, but I could tell you what I think about this question. This is what I've been trying to explain in the paper that I read for you today, is even if we accept that Islam is the true religion because on the basis of revelation we have it said that this is the right religion, everybody should be Muslims, then the question occurs that if you accept that Islam is the correct religion, and you accept the revelation of the Quran, and you accept that the other religions have somehow deviated from original revelations from God, then how are we supposed to engage with people of other religious traditions? This becomes, for me, the main issue. Now, pluralistic interpretations try to find some way to say that, well, really they all have something that's true, and so we could just concentrate on that, and the other things are kind of secondary. It's the common things that we should concentrate on. And I find that unacceptable for lots of reasons. One of them is that it seems to me that one of the things that's emphasized the most within any given tradition are the claims that aren't held in common among the other traditions. So, for example, the example that I'm using most of the time is between Islam and Christianity. There's the issue of the redemption. That Christ died for our sins or not. That's an important statement. And to accept pluralism as it's developed either by the esotericists or by John Hick and others is to somehow diminish the importance of that kind of claim. So I want to say that, look, they're both important claims for each tradition. As a Muslim, I don't accept this claim, but I can respect that this claim is important for the Christian, and furthermore, I can accept that God, by His mercy, might use this very belief that I think is a wrong belief to lead the person to Him. That is, I always tell this story. There was a German guy who went to Holland, and he didn't know Dutch language. And he saw a beautiful house there, and he asked, who's the owner of this house? And they said to him, "Nicht verstehen," something that means, don't understand what you said. And the German guy said, "Nicht verstehen." He must be a rich guy. And then he sees a boat being unloaded. And he says, "Boy, what a huge boat, all this goods being unloaded. Who owns all this stuff?" And he asked one of the dock workers, and he said, "Nicht verstehen," don't understand what you're talking about. And he thought, oh, it's the same guy that had the beautiful house. And then he saw a funeral procession, and he lined up and said a prayer for the man who died. And he said, who is it who just died? And they told him, "Nicht verstehen." And he started crying. He said, oh, all this wealth, all this money, everything he had, and now he's being buried. And he says, from this we understand how inconsequential are the things of this world. So he came to the appreciation of a deep, important truth, but not by way of true beliefs. So likewise, we can accept that people from other religious traditions might be completely mixed up in their theology from our own point of view, but yet arrive at very important religious truths.
Only I want to ask your presentation since yesterday up today, the relevance to our topic research of intellectuality and spirituality. How do you connect that issue of religious pluralisms and all your presentations and lectures to this main topic of our research?
That's a good question. What in yesterday's lectures, I was trying to give an overview of how Shiite Islam engages with other kind of intellectual traditions, specifically with respect to philosophy of religion, and then more specifically with regard to investigations about the concept of God.